My name is Chris Raymond, and for 10 years, I gave everything to a company called Deltacore Solutions. I wasn't just another employee. I was the one who stayed late when others clocked out, the one who fixed problems even when it wasn't my job. I missed birthdays, vacations, and even family moments, all because I believed loyalty still meant something. The company felt like home. I started as a junior data analyst and worked my way up to managing entire projects. My boss, Mr. Lewis, often called me the backbone of operations. But one Monday morning, everything changed. I woke up to an email from HR with the subject line: "Termination notice, effective immediately." My heart dropped. I reread it over and over, hoping it was a mistake. No warning, no explanation, just, "Your services are no longer required. Please return all company property." 10 years gone in 5 cold sentences. I sat there staring at the screen, numb, wondering how loyalty could be rewarded with betrayal. Something deep inside me whispered, "Don't let this go." That day felt unreal. I walked into the office, even though I wasn't supposed to because I needed answers. People stared, some with pity, others pretending not to notice. At my desk, my ID card no longer worked. The system had locked me out completely. When I tried to speak to HR, the lady at the desk gave a rehearsed line. "Chris, your termination was an executive decision. We can't discuss it further." I could hear the tremble in her voice. She knew something I didn't. Mr. Lewis, my boss, wasn't in. His assistant said he was in meetings all day. That's when it hit me. They didn't just fire me, they wanted to erase me. I left quietly, but my mind wasn't quiet. Every project, every report, every confidential document, I remembered them all. Especially the Omega project, a top-secret financial software I helped design to detect fraud. The irony, that same system could easily expose hidden fraud too. And I still had access to the early prototypes, saved on my personal drive. For the first time that day, I smiled. I spent the next few days replaying everything, from the late nights fixing code to the meetings where executives took credit for my work. Then a rumor reached me through a former colleague. "Chris, they fired you because you questioned the data in the Omega project. They said you were becoming a risk." A risk for asking why millions of dollars were missing from the system logs. That's when I knew I hadn't been fired for no reason. I'd been silenced. I opened my laptop and revisited the old code. I ran the software prototype again, this time focusing on the company's internal accounts. What I found made my stomach twist. Someone had been diverting client funds into private accounts, using hidden scripts within the system I helped build. The people who fired me were covering it up. And I had proof. I drafted a short email to HR, polite, professional, but with one chilling line at the end. "Before I hand over my company laptop, I think you should check the financial logs from the Omega project again." Then I hit send. The moment I sent that email, I felt both fear and freedom. Part of me wondered if I'd just made the biggest mistake of my life. But another part, the part that had been loyal and used, wanted justice. I didn't sleep that night. My mind kept running through memories, the quiet talks with Mr. Lewis, the times I noticed irregular numbers in reports, the hush-hush meetings between executives. By morning, I got a reply from HR, just 3 words. "Thank you, Chris." It wasn't a normal thank you. It felt like a warning. That same day, my phone buzzed with messages from old coworkers. "Bro, what did you do? Management looks tense today. They're talking about an internal audit." I smiled faintly. My one email had already started a storm. But I didn't plan to stop there. I still had access to encrypted project logs on an old flash drive, logs that showed who made those secret money transfers. When I opened them, I saw something I didn't expect. Mr. Lewis's name. Mr. Lewis. The same man who once told me I was like family. He wasn't just involved, he was the main link in the chain. He had approved the fake vendor accounts that the diverted funds were sent to. Every piece of evidence pointed straight at him and 2 other executives. I sat back in my chair, heart pounding. 10 years I'd trusted him. 10 years I'd helped build his reputation. Now I understood why he avoided me, why HR gave me the cold treatment. They didn't fire me for performance, they fired me to bury the truth. But here's what they didn't know: I'd always kept backups. I'd been documenting every major change since the day I noticed odd transfers. I knew then that one email wasn't enough. This wasn't about revenge anymore, it was about exposing them. So I began to prepare a report, clean, simple, full of dates, transactions, and proof. By the time I finished, it was nearly midnight. The last line read, "If this reaches the public, Deltacore Solutions will fall." And I wasn't bluffing. 2 days later, a black car parked outside my house. 2 men in suits stepped out. One introduced himself as Mr. Grant from Corporate Security. He smiled politely, but his eyes were cold. "Chris, we'd like to retrieve any remaining company files from your devices," he said. "It's part of the offboarding process." I knew that was a lie. HR never sent anyone to my house before. I told them I'd already deleted everything. They nodded and left, but not before one of them said softly, "Be careful, Mr. Raymond. Sometimes curiosity leads to trouble." That night, I realized how deep this went. If they were willing to send people to my home, they were scared. I checked my inbox again, dozens of unread messages from coworkers, one from an unknown address that said, "We know what you found, let's talk." No name, just a signature. Internal Compliance Division. For the first time, I thought, maybe I wasn't alone in this. The email from Internal Compliance Division haunted me all night. Was it real, or just another trick from management to track me down? By morning, curiosity won. I replied with just one line. "Who are you, and how did you know what I found?" Minutes later, another message came back. "I'm Alina Cruz, lead auditor. You're not crazy, Chris. We've been following the same money trail you discovered." I froze. She mentioned things I hadn't told anyone, names, project codes, even file paths. She was definitely real. We agreed to meet in a quiet cafe far from the city center. When I arrived, a woman in her early 30s waved at me. She looked calm but serious. "Chris," she said, "they fired you because you were too close. Mr. Lewis and 2 board members have been moving funds offshore. Your Omega logs can prove it." I leaned forward, "And what happens if I hand them over?" She smiled slightly. "Then you'll help us bring them down and maybe you'll get your life back." For the first time in weeks, I felt a spark of hope. Over the next week, Alina and I worked in secret. She gave me a secure link to upload the encrypted files. I sent everything: code samples, hidden transfer routes, fake vendor names, and internal chat logs. Each file was like a puzzle piece, and together they told a dark story. Deltacore's top executives had been quietly stealing client funds for years, millions gone under the cover of system errors. Alina called one night and said, "We are taking this to the Financial Crimes Bureau, but we'll need you to testify when the time comes." The thought made my hands shake. I wasn't a hero, I was just a guy who wanted his job back. But this was bigger than me now. Meanwhile, I got another email from HR. "Chris, please return your company laptop by Friday or face legal action." I laughed. That laptop had already done its job. Every bit of evidence they tried to hide was now with compliance. They thought they'd silenced me. Instead, they gave me a microphone. By the second week, whispers started spreading. News of an internal investigation reached the media. Employees were being questioned, departments frozen. I got a message from a former coworker. "Chris, the boardroom is chaos. They're blaming each other. Mr. Lewis hasn't shown up in days." It felt strange, watching the same people who treated me like dirt now panic. Elena texted me again. "We've traced $24 million in fake transactions. Your files sealed the case. Great work, Chris." I didn't know whether to cry or laugh. All I had done was hit send on one email, and it triggered a chain reaction that would shake an empire. Then something unexpected happened. An official letter arrived at my door, not from HR, but from the Financial Bureau of Investigation. It read, "Mr. Raymond, your cooperation is essential to an ongoing corporate fraud case. You are protected under whistleblower law." For the first time since my termination, I felt safe and powerful. A week later, I walked into a tall government building with shaking hands. The sign read Financial Bureau of Investigation. Inside, everything smelled of paper and coffee. An agent named Mr. Howard met me at the door. "Chris Raymond," he said, smiling kindly, "we've heard a lot about your work on the Omega project." He led me into a small room. A recorder clicked on, and he asked me to explain everything from the beginning. I told them how I'd noticed missing funds, how I'd been fired, and how I sent that one email. Every detail poured out of me like water breaking through a dam. When I finished, the room was silent. Finally, Mr. Howard said, "You just helped us open one of the biggest fraud cases this year." He handed me a document, Witness Protection Agreement. I wasn't a criminal, I was now an official whistleblower. Walking out of that building, I breathed deeply. For the first time in months, I wasn't scared. I was part of something bigger, and justice was finally on my side. The next morning, the news broke everywhere. Delta Solutions under federal investigation. I sat on my couch watching the headlines roll by, still half in disbelief. Reporters swarmed the company's gates. Mr. Lewis and 2 board members were nowhere to be found. Elena called me that afternoon. "You did it, Chris. The files you gave us confirmed offshore accounts in 3 countries. The authorities are freezing everything." My heart pounded as she spoke. Part of me felt proud, but another part felt sad. 10 years of my life, all those memories, friendships, and dreams, now covered in scandal. Later that night, I got a message from an unknown number. "Meet me tomorrow at 10 a.m. by the old park. We need to talk. L." I knew exactly who L was. Mr. Lewis. The next morning, the sky was grey. I almost didn't go, but curiosity pushed me there. Mr. Lewis was waiting on a park bench, wearing sunglasses and a dark coat. He looked nothing like the confident boss I once knew. His eyes were red, his hands shaking slightly. "Chris," he said quietly, "you don't understand. I never meant for it to go this far." I crossed my arms. "You stole from people who trusted you." He sighed. The board pushed me into it. It started small, fake invoices, a few transfers. Then it grew. I couldn't stop it. I stared at him, anger and pity mixing inside me. "All I ever did was work hard, Mr. Lewis. You ruined lives for greed." He lowered his head. "They'll take everything from me. Please tell them I cooperated." I turned to leave. "Maybe," I said softly, "you should have thought about cooperation before you hit send on my termination email." Then I walked away, leaving him sitting alone in the cold morning wind. The following week felt like watching a building collapse in slow motion. News channels played Deltacor's downfall non-stop. Executives were questioned, bank accounts were frozen. Share prices fell almost to zero. Elena called every day to keep me updated. "Chris," she said one night, "the evidence you gave us was enough to confirm $42 million in stolen funds. The entire board is under investigation." I sat in silence, trying to take it in. 10 years of loyalty had been traded for greed, and now the truth was out for the world to see. Still, it didn't feel like victory. It felt heavy, like watching a house you helped build burn down. A week later, I got an unexpected email. It was from a lawyer representing the company's investors. "Mr. Raymond, we understand you provided key evidence in the case. The investors wish to compensate you for your cooperation and damages suffered." I blinked. Compensate me? It felt unreal. After losing everything, maybe life was finally giving something back. 2 months later, I received a large brown envelope. Inside was an official letter and a check with more zeros than I'd ever seen in my life. $1.2 million. I stared at it for minutes, my heart racing. It wasn't just money, it was closure. The letter said, For your honesty, courage, and invaluable contribution to uncovering corporate fraud, the Investors Council offers this as restitution. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. For years, I'd been underpaid, overworked, and overlooked. Now, one reply email had turned everything around. I walked outside, breathing the evening air. For the first time, I didn't feel bitter, I felt free. But even in that peace, a strange thought crossed my mind. If I hadn't found those files, if I had just stayed silent, would they still be out there, stealing from more people? I knew then that maybe losing my job was the best thing that ever happened to me. Months passed. The investigation finally ended with several arrests, including Mr. Lewis. He pled guilty and was sentenced to 12 years in prison. Elena called me after the trial. "It's over, Chris, justice was served." Her voice sounded relieved, almost proud. I thanked her, but deep down, I knew something else had changed too. I wasn't the same quiet worker anymore. I used part of the settlement to start my own small firm, a data security company focused on detecting corporate fraud. I called it Clearline Analytics. The first day I opened the office, I hung a framed quote on the wall. "Loyalty is earned, not owed." Every time I looked at it, I remembered the man I used to be, and the one email that changed everything. But I didn't know one last twist was coming. Because Deltacor's story wasn't completely over. One quiet afternoon, I was in my new office, sorting through client files, when an unexpected email appeared in my inbox. Subject: we need to talk, it's about Deltacor. It was from Elena. My stomach tightened, I hadn't heard from her in weeks. I opened the message quickly. "Chris, something strange happened. During the audit, one of the digital vaults we confiscated from Deltacor suddenly went missing. The access logs show your old credentials." I froze. My old credentials? That didn't make sense. My employee account had been deactivated months ago. I called her right away. "Elena, I swear, I haven't logged in since the day they fired me." She believed me, but her voice sounded tense. "I know, Chris, but someone used your old ID to move files worth millions in contract value. We're tracing it now." I leaned back, heart racing. Someone was trying to frame me again. And if they succeeded, all the justice I'd fought for could vanish overnight. I barely slept that night. Memories of my old office, late hours, and passwords filled my mind. Who could have access to my login? Then it hit me, Mr. Lewis wasn't the only one in management with deep system access. There was also Janet, the head of IT security. She'd been strangely quiet after my termination, even though we'd worked closely for years. The next morning, I drove to the government office to see Elena in person. She showed me a printout of the server logs. At the bottom of the page was a single line. "Access by Raymond C. at deltacoratech.com, 02:17 a.m. I pointed to it. That timestamp, that's when all employee accounts were still locked by Janet's department, right? Elena nodded slowly. Her eyes narrowed. "You're saying she could have cloned your access?" "Yes," I said. "Janet had admin rights. She could use any account she wanted." Elena scribbled notes. "If that's true, she's in big trouble." I exhaled, half relieved, half worried. Because if Janet really did this, it meant the corruption wasn't fully gone. 2 days later, I got another call from Elena. "Chris," she said, voice urgent, "you were right, we caught Janet." She explained how they traced her digital trail. Janet had used my old credentials to access hidden crypto wallets tied to offshore accounts. She planned to shift the blame on me once everything was discovered. I sank into my chair. So even after everything, after the arrest, the settlement, the headlines, someone still tried to destroy me. "She's in custody now," Elena continued. "You're completely cleared." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It felt like closing the last page of a painful chapter. That night, I stood by my apartment window, city lights glowing below. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel small. I felt like someone who had faced the storm and come out stronger. But deep down, I also knew one thing for sure: I'd never trust blind loyalty again. A full year passed since DeltaCore fell. My company, Clearline Analytics, began growing faster than I ever imagined. We got our first major contract from the same investors who once sued DeltaCore. It felt strange working with them again, but this time, I was on my own terms. I hired a small but loyal team, people who valued honesty and teamwork. No secrets, no office politics, no fake smiles. One morning, a man from the investors' board visited. He shook my hand and said, "Chris, your system helped us detect fraud in another company. You've saved us millions again." His words hit me deep. For years, I was treated like I didn't matter. Now, people were thanking me for the same skills that once got ignored. That evening, I looked at my office sign glowing on the wall. Clearline Analytics, founded by Chris Raymond. It was small, but it meant everything. I finally realized I didn't need DeltaCore anymore. I had built something better from the ashes. Life slowly found balance again. I had a new office, good clients, and peace of mind. But one thing never left me: the memory of that cold HR email that ended my career. Sometimes I'd open the old folder where I saved it. Subject: termination of employment, effective immediately. It still made my chest tighten. But right next to it was my reply, the one that changed everything. Please see attached files for clarification. That one line had cost DeltaCore millions and exposed their lies. Funny how life can flip from despair to destiny with just a few words. One Friday night, while closing my laptop, I smiled and whispered, "Thank you, HR, you fired the wrong guy." It wasn't revenge anymore. It was gratitude, because if they hadn't ended my job, I'd never have started my purpose. Months later, a journalist reached out for an interview. She wanted to write a story about corporate whistleblowers who changed industries. At first, I said no, I didn't want fame. But she insisted. "Chris, people need to hear this. Your story gives hope." After a long pause, I agreed on one condition: she'd focus on lessons, not revenge. The article came out 2 weeks later, titled, "The Man Who Replied to His Termination Email and Brought Down a $1 Million Empire." It spread like wildfire online. Old coworkers messaged me, some apologizing, others amazed. Even my parents called, saying they were proud. I realized something powerful that day. You don't need to shout your worth. Sometimes quiet actions echo louder than any speech. And mine. It started with one quiet, angry, honest reply. After the article went viral, my inbox overflowed with messages. Some were from strangers who said my story gave them courage to speak up. Others were from workers who had been treated unfairly and didn't know how to fight back. One message stood out. It was from Sarah, the HR lady who sent me that email years ago. She wrote, "Chris, I never knew the truth behind your termination. I only followed orders, I'm sorry." I read it twice. For a moment, old anger returned. But then I took a deep breath and replied, "I forgive you, we all did what we thought was right." That night, I slept peacefully for the first time in years. Because forgiveness didn't make me weak. It made me free. A few weeks later, I was invited to speak at a business conference. The topic was integrity in the workplace. Standing on that stage, looking at hundreds of faces, I felt a mix of nerves and pride. I started with a simple line. I was once fired over an email, but that email became my turning point. People leaned in, listening closely as I told my story. When I finished, the room went silent, then erupted in applause. In that moment, I realized something powerful. Losing my job wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of a better one. After the conference, a young man approached me. He looked nervous and said, "Sir, I'm where you were, underappreciated and scared to lose everything. What should I do?" I smiled and said, Don't let fear control your value. If they can't see your worth, build something where others will. He nodded, tears in his eyes. That single conversation reminded me why everything had to happen the way it did. Sometimes pain is just preparation for purpose. And mine was finally clear: to help others turn unfair endings into new beginnings. One rainy evening, I walked past the old Deltacor building. The logo was gone, the lights off, just an empty space. But in that silence, I didn't feel anger. I felt peace. I took out my phone, snapped a picture, and whispered, "Thanked you for firing me." Because that one cruel act pushed me into a life of freedom, impact, and truth. Back home, I sat at my desk, opened my laptop, and smiled at my company's website. Under my photo were the words, "Built on integrity, powered by second chances." And that's when it hit me. It wasn't my reply that cost them millions. It was their greed that lost them everything. Mine was just an answer. An honest one,